Hey there, friends. Welcome to another week. Although, remember, the work week is a fiction. Monday doubly so. You can get rid of them if you really want to. This is Social Justice Alchemy. Alright, I am skipping over the Akashic Record in the Skeptic's Dictionary and getting right to alchemy. Very briefly, the Akashic Record was part of the Theosophical movement, which was a mystical Gnostic thing from the 19th century. It's a bit of spiritual mumbo-jumbo about how all human experience and knowledge is contained in some sort of spiritual realm. It's not really all that different from other spiritual or supernatural nonsense, except that it honestly looks an awful lot like a celestial filing system. Seriously, they talk about it like it's an actual set of records. Tablets or microfilm. I mean, obviously they mean it metaphorically, but not really. Anyway, I haven't seen references to the Akashic Records around, although maybe that's just me. And it really fits in with any other kind of supernatural, otherworldly stuff, or gaining access to special knowledge through mystical means. Basically, it's just plain false, and not all that interesting. So, alchemy. The popular conception of alchemy is of the attempt to turn lead into gold, and other base metals into other precious metals. But lead into gold is the most popular one. And the Skeptic's Dictionary falls for this one pretty hard. They open with the mysticism, and eventually get around to mentioning an alchemist who contributed something to real knowledge. Paracelsus, 16th century. Alchemy is a pseudoscience. It is a bunch of mystical nonsense about the transformation of one material into another, and creating magical potions to do wondrous, impossible things. But that's not what it was. It's really easy to see the connection between alchemy and chemistry. Alchemist. Chemist. Alchemy was the ancient world's fumbling, hesitant steps toward a genuine understanding of physical materials and their chemical properties. Yes, it came bundled with a lot of nonsense. That's what you expect. It was hampered by the fact that storing, transmitting, sharing knowledge was difficult and incredibly expensive. There were individuals scattered all over the place, working entirely alone, pursuing false leads, making discoveries, all in almost complete ignorance of what everyone else was doing. Like everything else, the discovery of cheap paper and the development of the printing press revolutionized alchemy. It took a few hundred years, but the mystical and religious horseshit was pared away, and we were left with chemistry, a solid foundation of genuine knowledge about materials and their interactions. The elixir of life, the philosopher's stone, the four elements, and the elusive quintessence, those all stuck around in alchemy, while chemistry joined the rest of the world in the light of day, doing things that actually work. I think it's helpful to remember that ancient people weren't stupid. And the things they were doing, in some ways what they were doing is exactly what we're doing now. The ancient alchemists were early scientists, struggling alone in the dark. They were also early mystical dipshits doing stupid, dangerous things, and fooling themselves into believing nonsense. The people haven't really changed. Some are better at deluding themselves, and others have a better knack for honesty. What's really changed is the method, the way we talk to one another and cooperate. We all record information and share it. We talk and argue. We work together. Mysticism, religion, faith, for all that it looks like a community, always boils down to solitary individuals, talking only to themselves, thinking they're talking to something else. A scientist in the lab, no matter how lonely they look, truly is part of a global community is never working alone. Alchemy today is nothing but magical potions, supernatural elements, impossible dreams, and the denial of science and medicine. Once upon a time, alchemy was a difficult, mostly blind, sometimes dangerously misguided, but ultimately noble quest for greater understanding.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son? Oh, where have you been, my darling young one? I've stumbled on the side of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I've crawled on 6 crooked highways. I've stepped on the middle of 7 sad forests. I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. And it's a hard rain's gonna fall. Oh, what did you see, my blue-eyed son? Oh, what did you see, my darling young one? I saw a newborn baby with wild wolves all around it. I saw a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a room full of men with their hammers a-bleeding. I saw a white ladder all covered with water. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard rain's gonna fall. And what did you hear, my blue-eyed son? And what did you hear, my darling young one? I heard the sound of a thunder, it roared out a warning. Heard the roar of a wave that could drown the whole world. Heard 1,000 drummers whose hands were ablazing. Heard 10,000 whispering and nobody listening. Heard one person starve, I heard many people laughing. Heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. Heard the sound of a crone who cried in the alley. And it's a hard rain's gonna fall. And who did you meet, my blue-eyed son? And who did you meet, my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a white man who walked a black dog. I met a young woman whose body was burning. I met a young girl, she gave me a rainbow. I met one man who was wounded in love. I met another man who was wounded with hatred. And it's a hard hard rain's gonna fall. Oh, what'll you do now, my blue-eyed son? Oh, what'll you do now, my darling young one? I'm a-going back out for the rain starts a-falling. I'll walk to the depths of the deepest black forest, where the people are many and their hands are all empty, where the pellets of poison are flooding their waters, where the home in the valley meets the damp, dirty prison, where the executioner's face is always well hidden, where hunger is ugly, where souls are forgotten, where black is the color, where none is the number. And I'll tell it and think it and speak it and breathe it, and reflect it from the mountain so all souls can see it. And I'll stand on the ocean until I start sinking, but I'll know my song well before I start singing. It's a hard rain's gonna fall.
Offense. It's not about offense. It was never about offense. Riley Dennis, a phenomenal YouTuber, recently put up a video about people being offended, how the term is used in defense and offense on both the right and the left. Riley mostly talks about her personal experience being attacked by people claiming she's a snowflake, and how she tries to use different terms to better communicate what she's really trying to say. I really recommend the video in particular, and her whole channel generally. She's pretty goddamn awesome. There's a link down in the thingy. That video inspired me to talk about this in my own way. And this has been rolling around in my head for a while. I read an article years ago, which I've never been able to find since. And I wish I could, because it had a really great line in it that obviously I have to paraphrase because I can't find the damn article. Offense was the greatest own goal the left ever scored. And the author was really correct there. Unfortunately, I don't think we could have done anything else. It was the only way to move the conversation forward. Let's take a look at what SJWs get offended about versus what fundagelicals and trolls get offended about. For the podcast listeners, I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm putting quotes around offended up there, because I want to indicate that offended probably isn't the right word. I also put quotes around it in that last sentence because I'm talking about my use of the word rather than actually using the word. Suspension error. Excuse me. Philosophy. Okay. Anyway. Here's what SJWs are offended by, in no particular order. People using racist dog whistles. People using racist slurs. People committing racist hate crimes. People using sexist dog whistles. People using sexist slurs. People committing sexist hate crimes. People using homophobic dog whistles. People using homophobic slurs. People committing homophobic hate crimes. Transphobic dog whistles. Transphobic slurs. Transphobic hate crimes. Dog whistles against religious minorities. Slurs against religious minorities. Hate crimes against religious minorities. People harassing, stalking, doxing, abusing, attacking, raping, murdering other people. Things right-wingers get offended by, in no particular order. People not saying Merry Christmas. Coffee cups not having Merry Christmas on them. Not being allowed to use the government to promote your religion. Not being allowed to use the government to stop other people practicing their religion. Being called racist. Being called homophobic. Being called transphobic. being called anti-Semitic, being called Islamophobic, being called xenophobic, being called sexist, being called a harasser, abuser, doxer, rapist, being called jerks, being asked to be kind, being asked to be polite, being asked to leave other people the fuck alone. Amanda Marcotte read an article recently, and she's written a book about how the right has gone into full-on troll mode. Links in the thingy. They don't care about facts or truth, or even about doing the right thing or making the world a better place, even for themselves. All they care about is winning, about owning the libs. They're driven by hatred and anger, by self-righteousness and fear. They're offended. They're offended all the damn time. They're offended and upset that they're losing their power and privilege. They're incredibly upset that they're no longer able to get away with the things they used to get away with, like putting their religion in a special place and using the power of government to protect it, like not having to think ever about the fact that they're white and not everyone in the world is white, like not having to think about the fact that they're men and not everyone is a man. They're just used to being in the center of everything and having the world set up for them, for their assumptions, and never having to think about anything or work to fit their desires into the way the world functions. The left isn't offended. The left has never been offended. It's never been about offense. It's about oppression. On the left, you have people who have had to fight for their whole damned lives. Queer folk, trans folk, people of color, women, the disabled, immigrants, Native Americans, Jews and Muslims and Hindus and every other religious group. Every single group of people who aren't rich, straight, cis, white Christian men. They're not crying because you're mean. They're fighting to get equal pay for equal work. They're fighting for the right to stability. To not get fired or evicted by a bigot. They're fighting so they don't have to fear violence in the street. They're fighting for all the things middle-class white folks take for granted every day. They're not upset that you hurt their feelings. They're worried you're going to kill them. Take a look at those lists. The left are offended by attacks on the basic humanity of people who don't have power. The right are offended by attacks on their privilege. It's not about offense. It's never been about offense. Offense is for people with privilege. Offense is for when you have a toy and you're worried someone's going to take it away. This is about oppression. Oppression is when you're one step away from starvation and you're worried someone's going to take your food away. In a way, talking about offense was an own goal. It let the right latch onto this narrative and call the left a bunch of spoiled children while they acted like the worst brats in existence. But it was necessary. We had to talk about offense because it's the only thing the privileged could understand. White people don't get followed around in stores by suspicious clerks. Straight people don't get harassed on the street. Cis people don't live every damn day with the pain of a body that isn't right. And Christians don't have to worry about some asshole in a MAGA hat kicking down the door and hosing their temple down with bullets. The privileged don't understand oppression. Sometimes it's possible to explain it to them, to get them to take the tiny step from people treat you differently because you're poor and that's wrong, to people treat you differently because you're black or gay or a woman and that's wrong. That's often difficult because they've been fed lies for so damn long about how minorities aren't being treated worse, but actually have more privilege than WASPs. They honestly believe that black people don't have to pay for college, that women get jobs more easily, that being Jewish means you're rich and in control of the world. White people also used to think that black schools were better than white schools in segregation. And they were upset about that. Different eras, same lies, same racism, same hatred all around. Talking about offense is a good first step, but we need to keep going. We need to talk about oppression and why people on the left aren't upset about being insulted. They're afraid because bigots are attacking their humanity. And attacking someone's humanity is followed, as we've seen more and more in Trump's America, by attacking them with guns and knives and fists and cars. Dog whistles and slurs lead to murder and genocide. That is what people on the left are fighting against. Okay, Yeah, no news this week. Not really feeling up to it. Let's just go ahead and keep making fun of Trump for being afraid of a little rain. Anywho, if you like what I'm doing here, please like, share, subscribe, leave positive reviews on places. If you want to talk back at me, you can hunt down the YouTube channel, Social Justice Alchemy, or you can find my blog, that's surgoshan.blogspot.com, surgoshan.blogspot.com. Or, if you're looking for something completely different, you can hunt down the other podcast I participate in. That's the Dungeons and Debacles podcast. It's a D&D podcast hosted by my friend Kevin. We are an evil group looking to unleash an ancient evil to destroy the world. And it's honestly a lot of fun. We are proceeding apace, doing wonderful, evil things. All right. Anyway, this has been another week in Social Justice Alchemy. I've been your host, John Brockman. See you next week.